towards that point. Hi, Susie, how are you? All right, all well. It's a good thing we're starting a minute early, potentially. Hi, Susie. Well, it's not quite 7 yet. Hi, Susie, can you let us know when you can hear us? Susie, you there? Good evening, Susie, are you there? Excellent. Well, I think we can start. It's fine. I think, given that the beginning of this is my announcements, we can start the meeting, and if Susie could start the live stream as soon as we're there. So anyway, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Vale of White Horses Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Max Thompson. I'll be chairing this meeting. This meeting is being held at our office in Abbey House, Abingdon. Voting members are here in person as required, but officers and public speakers are able to join remotely if they wish through Microsoft Teams. This meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel for public viewing. I have 5 housekeeping announcements. So firstly, for those joining remotely, when you're not speaking, please ensure your microphone is muted and your camera is off. If you're sharing a presentation on the screen, please stop sharing as soon as it's not needed. Public speakers must only have their cameras on and be unmuted when addressing the committee or answering questions of clarification in their designated slots. Evacuation procedure. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is in the corridor immediately to your right, just out there. And please assemble at assembly point 9, which is just down there at the back. On arriving at this meeting, you should have read the emergency evacuation procedure and signed the fire register. So please inform Democratic Services if you have not done so. Thirdly, mobile phones, please off or silent. Fourthly, members of the public who wish to leave the meeting after the application they're interested in has been discussed, you're very welcome to do so, but please do so swiftly and silently. And then fifthly, when the meeting is ended, I'll ask for confirmation the live stream has ended. At that point, please make your way out the building, remembering to sign out as you leave. And just a final point, this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. And I ask that members of the public, both those attending here in person and those attending virtually, ensure that they do not shout out or disrupt the committee's deliberation outside of those who have registered to speak in their allocated slots. Excellent, great. Agenda item 2, Emily Barry, do we have any apologies this evening?
We do, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Cheryl Briggs, who is substituted by Councillor Sarah James this evening, and also from Councillor VOWH.
Okay, thank you very much. And would you mind doing a roll call for those watching online?
Councillor Ron Batstone.
Present.
Councillor Jenny Hannaby.
Present.
Councillor Scott Walton.
Present.
Councillor Sarah James. Present. Councillor Rob Madison.
Present.
Councillor Mike Pickhills.
Present.
Councillor Jill Rayner. Present. And Councillor Max Thompson.
Present. Thank you very much. I now turn to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting 17th of April 2024. Does anyone have any comments on those, or would someone like to propose we accept them as a correct record? Councillor Horton. Thank you very much. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Hannaby. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Those pass, and I'll sign them off for the meeting. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Do we have any this evening? Councillor Horton.
Yes, Chair. Item 9, I am the ward councillor for that item, and I will be speaking on it. So
thanks. So thank you very much. Perfect. Agenda item 5, urgent business. Emily Hampton.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And finally, so agenda item 6, public participation. I confirm we've got a number of speakers on 3 of the 4 items we're going to be looking at this evening. So thank you to those who've registered. And we also received a couple of statements which have been read and were circulated to members of the committee prior to this. And we may make reference to them in either the questioning or the debate. But that's everything from me for now. So with that, let's move on to agenda item 7, which is the outline application, Entry Global Services, Appleford Road, Sutton Courtenay. Amanda Rendell, I believe you're presenting on this one.
Thank you, Chair.
Excellent, perfect.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks outline planning permission for the redevelopment of the site for up to 17 dwellings. All matters, layout, scale, appearance and landscaping are indicative at this stage, and would not be approved now as they require consideration and reserved massive knowledge. Permission is simply sought on the principle of the development and the access arrangements. This application has been called into planning committee because Sutton Courtenay Parish Council have objected to the proposed development on a number of grounds. These are overdevelopment, connectivity for pedestrians, timing of traffic data collection, and application should not be determined until the outcome of the HIP1 inquiry is known. Since completion of the committee report, 2 further letters of representation have been submitted, raising objections in respect of footpaths and connectivity in public transport, the location of a play area in the flood zone, access to adjacent open space, overdevelopment, impact on utilities, consideration of the HIP1 outcome, and questioning why the application is still an outline. Responses to these issues are set out in full in the report, and the issues themselves do not pose a constraint to the development, but I will summarise the main issues now. The principle and redevelopment of the site is considered acceptable, and in accordance with CP 29, the local plan, the application is accompanied by a marketing report which shows that the current property, which was formerly a travel agency, has been marketed since May 2022 at a reasonably low rent without any viable interest. This included direct marketing to 97 applicants via Carter Jones' website and social media sites such as Zoopla, Prime Location and LoopNet. This has led to an internal inquiries, all of which deemed the property unsuitable with no viewings. Council's Economic Development Officer is of the view that this provides evidence that there is no demand for this as employment land, particularly as there are better options available in Abingdon and Milton Park, with better transport links for business users. Therefore, no objections are raised to the loss of employment on the site. Whilst the proposed layout is only indicative, get back to show you the indicative layout plan. Officers are satisfied that 17 dwellings could be appropriately accommodated on the site with the associated landscaping and infrastructure. As this application is an outline only, conditions will be imposed to restrict the height and number of the dwellings on the site. No objections have been raised from the Highway Authority regarding the proposed access arrangements or timing of the traffic data undertaken. Access to the site is only with existing site access and will be with minor alterations. The development is not likely to generate a significant number of traffic movements compared against the extent employment use. Concern has been expressed that the application should not be determined until the outcome of the HIP inquiry. The Highway Authority advised that the releasing the development strategy, which was adopted by Cabinet on the 21st of June 2021, allows for some development to come forward prior to the new HIP1 funded infrastructure being delivered and open to public use. The proposed residential development here falls under Tier 3, which states that development of sites of 10 plus houses that will generate new vehicular movements in the morning and evening commuter periods are no longer to be objected to by highways officers on traffic impact grounds. This is on the basis that HIF funding has been secured and OCC is confident in delivering HIF1. Development proposals such as this application site will be assessed on their merits and strategic highway and public transport contributions will be sought. Off-site and on-site highway infrastructure will be expected to be delivered early on for these development sites to encourage sustainable and active travel patterns. Occupational controls will be applied to the development sites to lessen the cumulative impact on the highway network. Therefore, there is no reason to withhold planning permission on these grounds. The majority of the site is within flood zone 1, which comprises the lowest risk of flooding, with a small part of the site in flood zone 2, which would be at medium risk of flooding. All dwellings will be located within flood zone 1. An area of open space is located within the area covered in flood zone 2. This is the plan that shows the flood zone area. It's not particularly clear. You can just see a little patch of the blue just going into the northeast corner of the site. This is where the open space is to be located, and the NPPF states that amenity open space, nature conservation and biodiversity land, which is all areas, this is the area where it will be producing biodiversity enhancements, are water compatible development and therefore an acceptable use on this part of the site. The EA raised no objections subject to specific conditions, and the council's drainage officer hasn't raised any objections either. Concern has been expressed regarding pedestrian routes from the site to the village centre and the nearby bus stops being insufficient. A continuous pedestrian footway is provided from Skylark Fields into the centre of the site. but it would basically follow the road into Sutton Courtenay to the west. The County Council will secure public transport services from the promoters of development schemes in order to promote sustainable growth and support positive travel habits. And in accordance with local plan policy, 15,300 is required towards improvements to bus services, 5,942 towards bus service infrastructure, and £66,151.59 towards strategic infrastructure towards the HIP1 scheme. The Highway Authority have not raised any objections to the principle of development in this location and acknowledge that without an improvement in bus services, the private motor vehicle is likely to be the first choice for these journeys. The applicant has confirmed that they are content with providing financial contributions towards public transport services and infrastructure, and the condition will be required in proposing a green travel plan. The local resident has expressed a desire for the site to be connected up to adjacent footpaths to the south, and the indicative plan does show a footpath to provide a direct link connection to Millennium Common, but further investigation is required. It is agreed this footpathing would be beneficial, and officers consider this as an important opportunity to improve the impermeability of the site. Should permission be granted, a condition can be attached requiring a pedestrian connection to be provided up to the red line. With regard to ecology, there is not considered to be any impact on protected species. Discussions have been held late on in the application process regarding the likelihood of great crested newts using the site. Officers are content that if they are present within the northern pond and ponds around the site and do utilise the terrestrial habits within the application site, Natural England would likely to be granting a derogation licence for the development works. Planning condition will also be required to request the submission of a biodiversity enhancement plan, which will detail all habitat creation enhancements on site. A further condition requiring a construction environmental management plan, which will detail further measures for protection and further assessments necessary. And on the final note, just an update on the Sutton Courtenay neighbourhood plan, which residents voted for the adoption of the Sutton Courtenay neighbourhood plan on the 11th of April 2024. Section 3 is a neighbourhood plan. Planning Act 2017 as amended its neighbourhood plans full legal effect once they have passed their local referendum. The full weight has been given to the Sutton Courtenay neighbourhood plan during consideration of this application. In conclusion, the principle of development on the site can be accepted, and it is agreed that it is no longer required for employment use. Development will provide benefits in providing additional housing, including affordable. Access arrangements are acceptable, and it's therefore officers' recommendation that the application be approved.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll return to some questions once we've heard from our speakers. So our first speaker on this application is Councillor Hugo. I do apologise for my mispronouncing. Rayworth?
Correct.
Perfect. A representative of Sutton Courtenay Parish Council, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us, Councillor. You'll have 3 minutes when you're ready, so please begin as and when.
My name is Hugo Rayworth. I'm here to speak on behalf of Sutton Courtenay Parish Council. Council would like to strongly object to the proposed development of this site for the following 4 reasons. 1, there is no need for additional housing within Sutton Courtenay. The Vale of the White Horse already has more than 5 years housing supply. The committee will also be aware that outline planning has also been granted at appeal for an additional 175 houses at Hobby Horse Lane in the village. 2, this is not an allocated site development in the current 2031 local plan. This is a speculative development. Indeed, the emerging 2041 local plan makes no reference to additional housing in and around the village in acknowledgement that the area has already been built out to capacity. Core policy CP3 of the local plan, highlighted in the pre-application planning advice, states that in larger villages, unallocated development will be limited to providing for local needs and to support employment services and facilities within local communities. As Sutton Courtenay is designated as a larger village, the proposed scheme does not meet the requirements for CP3. 3, the proposed scheme does not meet the requirements for CP29 of the local plan. CP29 states the employment sites must be safeguarded for their use. Pre-application planning advice states that any application must demonstrate there is no reasonable prospect of land or premises being used for continued employment use, and that a mixed-use enabling development which incorporates employment space could not be accommodated or would be unviable. Carter Jones states in their marketing report, their 4-page marketing report, that they've marketed the property to let for 12 months as requested by the planning officer. However, in our consideration, their marketing strategy has not been robust and does not meet the planning officer's requirement for change of use to be considered because 1, no attempt has been made to sell the building. 2, no attempt has been made to let the property on a multi-tenant basis in smaller units. 3, most importantly, no evidence is provided that alternative commercial uses were considered. This site is a prime location for development of amenities such as a local shop, dentist, education facility, or even GP surgery. With the explosion of new builds in the area, these are very much needed, especially at this end of the village, and building yet more housing on this site will be to destroy a site with potential in its existing form. 4, the scheme will add to already unsustainable traffic. Traffic continues to be a major challenge within the village, especially at peak times. The dismissed planning appeal for housing north of Appleford Road in 2020 cited the problem of increased traffic on Appleford Road as one of the reasons for refusal. HIF 1 may well be for a long-term solution. However, with delivery not expected now until 2027 at the earliest, this solution is a long way off. In allowing the Hobby Horse Lane appeal, the inspector, recognising the issue of additional traffic flow, had limited the number of new dwellings to 45 until the bridge is completed, presumably recognising this is the limit the village can take. Adding 17 new dwellings at this site is therefore unsustainable. In summary, the parish council asked the council to reject this application because it is a speculative application. The Vale has 5 years housing supply. The applicant has not sufficiently investigated other official uses and is not compliant with LPP 1 in either LP 31 or the new LP 41.
Sorry, thank you very much. That's what we had.
3 minutes, okay, that's what I meant.
Right, I'll ask if there are any questions or clarification for you.
I've got copies of this, by the way.
Has anyone got any questions or clarification? I'll say thank you very much for your time. It's very comprehensive. Thank you. I'm now going to turn to our next speaker, who I believe is joining us virtually, Ellie Neal, who's speaking in support of the application. Are you there?
Hello, hi.
Hi there. Well, we can hear you, we can see you, and as with everyone, you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Ellie Neal. I'm from Carter Jonas, and I'm here on behalf of my client, Gemcast Holdings. We're here in support of the application and obviously to answer any questions you may have in relation to our proposal. So whilst Tomorrow Court has in the past been a thriving employment site, it has now remained unoccupied since March 2020. Marketing of the site for the office use was undertaken, and this demonstrated there was no demand for this type of property in this location, and the application was accompanied by that marketing report, which was reviewed by the council's economic development officer. An option that we did explore for the site was a mixed-use development which incorporated an element of commercial space in with housing. This presented a number of challenges, as this is a somewhat unusual commercial site. The current office building is unimposing, the site is well screened in wider views. Whilst this positively contributes to the semi-rural setting, the lack of visibility wouldn't be suitable for the majority of commercial enterprises, especially those who rely on some element of passing trade. Additionally, the significant residential development surrounding the site limits the opportunities for commercial enterprises. The noise and highways impact of many commercial uses would not be suitable in such close proximity to the residents. This is a modest-sized development site, which is simply not a suitable location for a mixed-use development. And given this, we feel that the site presents a fantastic opportunity to provide additional housing within the built-up settlement. Prior to the submission of the application, we did undertake significant survey work relating to flooding, drainage, highway safety and ecology. And as a result of this work, we did reduce the quantum of development from what we'd previously proposed for the site. And we produced the indicative layout that accompanies the application on the basis of that survey work. Whilst we understand the layout that we have presented has some challenges in terms of the council's consultees, what we do think it does is sufficiently demonstrate that the site can be developed to accommodate up to 17 dwellings with the associated amenity space and the infrastructure that's required. At the reserve matter stage, the layout can be adjusted and refined to address the concerns that have been raised. Overall, this development does make a valuable contribution towards the housing in the area. It utilises previously developed land that's no longer required for its current purpose, and therefore I hope that you'll be able to support the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There may be some questions for you, so I'll ask, are there any questions of clarification? I actually have a couple, if that's okay. So we've heard a lot about Core Policy 29. We've heard a lot about the marketing report that Carter Jonas produced, and also there was an additional, statement I read earlier today that was on mixed use, right? So
Correct.
I guess I've got a couple of questions. The first is we heard from Councillor Rayworth that that considerations of whether this could be rented out on a multi-tenant basis don't appear to be within that report. I wondered if you could comment on that and why, or do you feel it's not suitable for a sort of multi-tenant basis as an employment opportunity?
To be honest, when we marketed the unit, it wasn't specifically stated that it had to be, marketed it had to be utilised by one particular person or group or anything like that. The issue probably with the site is that it's quite an unusually sized building. It's very small on a very large plot, which isn't actually particularly desirable for most commercial enterprises, because obviously there's almost a lot of what you'd consider to be wasted space on the commercial site. So there was interest from various groups, but as you can see from the marketing report, that interest was really from people who didn't necessarily want it as an office unit, but also couldn't really afford it. And so it wasn't only people looking at it on the basis of it being, a very sort of typical office layout, but it still really didn't meet the needs of what they needed. And that's a lot of that came down to the location of the site, but also there are issues of the fact that it is a very sort of quite a private site, which isn't great for commercial purposes. So I think that's really what's been putting people off.
Okay, cool. So because one thing that came out of this was, I think it was in the addendum planning statement, it said the size was not the issue, the location was. So could you comment a bit further on why the location is unsuitable, or for your research, you think the location is unsuitable for employment opportunities?
The feedback that I was given by our marketing team, the team that actually did that piece of work, it wasn't me, unfortunately, was that it's too close to the key centres of Abingdon and Milton Park, where there is, better connectivity. There's more industry, there's more commercial there. So they'd be better placed elsewhere. That site on the edge of Sutton Courtenay is really close to residences, so it limits how you could use the site a little bit, because there's going to be potential noise, highways impacts and things like that as well. So it's just really it's too far from the centre of things, but it's almost it's just too close to, as I said, Abingdon and Milton Park, where there's available space that can be used.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? In which to say thank you very much for your time this evening, and I'll now turn to any questions we have of our officer. So does anyone have any questions for our officer on this application? That's Hannah.
Would you consider this a brownfield site? Thank you. There's a sort of the noise implication. Have you got any comments to say about the noise in and around?
Yes, I mean, the application was, we consulted the environmental health officer who will comment on the application, and the application itself was accompanied by a noise impact assessment as well. So, we would be expressing any concern regarding noise and dust from any future construction work. So we need a construction management plan for the site, which covers those elements in terms of protection. Further noise mitigation measures would be submitted as part of a reserved matters application when the location and setting of each residential unit is known.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I've looked at our statutory consultees, and it's all no objection all the way down from the reports.
Yeah.
So I just want to, just in case people haven't seen that.
Absolutely.
Yes, I think I'll leave it there. I might have some more later on.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about overdevelopment in Sutton Courtenay generally, because the village has had lots of new builds. There is some infrastructure in the village, but frankly, probably beyond what is probably underneath the capabilities required for a number of houses being put there. Indeed, the inspector in the Hobbyhorns Lane case has limited the number of properties that you've developed in advance of one. Can you just explain to me why we think we can actually put another 17 houses into what is already an overloaded village?
I think the scheme is a relatively modest scheme with only 17 dwellings, and I think ultimately, it lies on the edge of Sutton Courtney on previously developed land. Obviously having an existing B1 use on it, and it's not allocated in the local plan, but it is considered that it accords with CP4, the local plan, in the bits within the built-up settlement of Sutton Courtney, and so there's no reason really to use them on that basis. The Highways Authority have recommended a number of planning obligations that would need to be required to mitigate the impact of the development on public transport, on bus services, improvements to bus stops. And there's also contributions towards education that the County Council have recommended as well, which I didn't cover in my presentations, but in the report, which would be towards secondary special education.
But the kind of truth of the matter is, that given its location, most movements will not be by bus or be by car. It's just the kind of nature of where that's positioned in the context of the village and the employment centre in Abingdon and Norton Park and etc. Oxford, that matters. And I just worry that we're overloading the village. Well, an already overloaded village is going to become even more overloaded. In particular, the 50 houses are going to be built at Poppy Horse Lane, sadly. Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor James.
Yes, thank you. We received a statement from resident Ian Bush, who commented on one of the conditions, which was condition 3H, a footpath connection to the south of the site connecting to leading to Millennium Common. Their statement clarifies actually that connection would link to the next housing set of housing, and that then a connection is still needed from that housing to Millennium Common. So I wondered what, if anything, we're able to do to actually make sure that connection can come forward, and particularly as Sutton Courtney Parish Council had commented on the problems with links to the rest of the village.
I mean, it's something that would really need to be considered as a sort of wider master plan for the area in terms of planning footpath connectivity in the area. The indicative layout plan showed a path that went down to the southern boundary, and it was hoped that they would just be able to link up to the other side. It was understood that there was a path the other side that led down to the Millennium Common, because I think that came through from one of the representations from a local resident as providing a suitable alternative rather than going directly around to the west and south and then following east again. I think that would need to be explored under that condition as to whether it could be actually implemented whilst the intention is there. Clearly we have no control over access over adjacent sites. And it's something that would really need to have been thought before the whole area was developed. So we can do as much as we can at this stage, retrospectively, if you like, with this application to try and open up discussions about improving connectivity to the south.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I can't see any, so I'm suggesting we move into debate, in which case can I call for a motion on this application? Councillor Hannaby.
I'd like to put in a motion to accept and approve the planning subject to all the completion of the 106 legal agreement to secure affordable housing and the following planning conditions, unless there's anything else that councillors wish to add.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Buttstone.
Yes, I'm happy to second this motion. I believe that it's a brownfield site, and I think we've looked at alternative possibilities for it. But at the end of the day, I mean, nationally as well as locally, we do need more houses, and it seems to me this is an opportunity to provide them.
Okay, right. Well, we have a motion on the floor, so I now ask if anyone wants to say anything on this. Councillor Piggott.
Yeah, I'm as I kind of cycling through Sutton Courtney thinking about this application at the back end of sorry, begin the week in the rain on it. So, and the village is overloaded with traffic. I mean, with queues coming back from where the Cullen Bridge is. I believe the village is overdeveloped. There's too many houses for the infrastructure that's available. I think this is the kind of application which, while 17 houses is valuable, I think waiting for the end of the public inquiry on H1, so we actually know that the road infrastructure, which would give relief to the centre of Sutton Court, is doing things. It's a small thing to do to wait for it. So I just fundamentally believe this is doing the wrong thing.
Okay, does anyone want to say anything further on this application?
And I
Councillor
come back on that.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, we're all plagued with traffic issues on our roads. I mean, it's just at the moment in any of our villages or towns, they're quite horrendous. The application has come now, and we're not sure what the appeal would be. I mean, we can't defer this presumably until after the hearing, so we have to make a decision this evening. 17 houses. And I believe that the connectivity can be got with some work, etc. I understand that Sutton Courtenay has had its fair share of houses, but then so have other people as well. And I just think that this site is a brownfield site, as that's my first question. And I think it would probably be better for housing with affordable housing on there. Than perhaps something on there that might not bring a very good employment site in the end, because we have got better sites in the towns, etc. And the fact that all the consultees we haven't got, even in the floodplain too, we've got no objection.
Yeah, I'm sort of in two minds about this. I think actually, I take I don't think we can or should defer this to the end of the inquiry.
We're having a conversation.
No, of course. So I think my concern with this one is over the question of the loss of employment, and I was very taken by what Councillor Rayworth said about the robustness of the marketing report and the robustness of the further assessment, both which I read today. I mean, it's a difficult one, right? Because we've got our employment team, our economic development team have said that this is sufficient. So it's a difficult one, because I must confess, when I read them, I did wonder about whether the marketing had been suitably robust for us to change the use of this for an employment site. So I'm still struggling on that basis, but that would be my only concern, would be whether we should defer this to get some more information on the marketing report, or get some further information about whether it really isn't suitable as an employment site. But I'm sort of very much in two minds, and I don't think we can defer it based on it might be. That's what I think. So yeah.
So there must be a reason why the inspector decided to limit Hobby Horse Lane to a certain number, and he would have looked at it a lot. Do
you remember what they limited it from?
170, 45. I mean, clearly, that's an important consideration, the fact that action was put in place. About the employment issue, I mean, I don't think it's our place to second guess the economic development officer. I'm sure they looked this long and hard. So
okay. Has anyone got anything further to say on this application? Anyone else? Okay, Councillor Rayner.
I've just got really mixed feelings about it. Again, following on from the estate agent that's agent that's marketing the site now, and the agent that was obviously putting the plan together for rental or lease or whatever. And I work in a very rural place, so I'm surrounded by lots of space. In a little place, and you cannot get a site there, you cannot get a place there. There is a queue for where I work. So when sort of the feedback is that there's too much space, or it's not hidden away, it sort of didn't feel right. I get the fact that I don't know what we can do. I've just got really mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, please, Councillor Andrew.
So we've heard from Carter Jonas, who has reputable firm, who has said that they have tried to market it in various areas. And then there's complications in various things on this area. So if you did get something on there, it might not be of a suitable, or even give decent employment. I think the site's so constrained as well. That's really why I thought that the fact that the small development and we've got affordable housing, etc. at 17,000, sort of like 700 or 70, and we have got the officers obviously has been diligent enough to go through all the consequences, etc., and has come up with the fact that for approval, and I can't see anything particularly myself on planning grounds, and we have to think about what might happen when we actually do decide on this, maybe appeals or whatever.
Understood.
The appeal, so I'm just I'm quite okay, happy. Well, not happy, but I think what I've suggested is something for the committee to vote on. If they don't want to vote it, then they have the option, don't they? I mean, it is very difficult for everybody when these sites come out.
Absolutely. That's right. Emily, do you want to go in?
Yeah, I thought it would just be useful, committee, if I just gave some clarification around traffic generation, because this has been raised around the hobby horse site versus what is happening at this site. This site, because it had an existing employment use, there was tricks. So the trip rate information computer system generated a certain number of trips that were existing from the employment. Hobby horse with a greenfield site, there were no existing or pre-trips there.
I remember.
So what's happened with this is on the transport statement, it highlights that there's actually a net reduction in trips as a result of the employment versus the residential. So I just want to provide that clarification around why there is a difference between what the inspector conditioned and did at Hobby Horse, which had no previous use, and what has happened on this site, and why there isn't a difference in approach. In addition, obviously, and that is why highways have said in this instance, there is no objection and this development can go ahead from a traffic perspective. But I think it's just important that I draw your attention to that.
Yeah, the condition for me personally, though, is that the place has been closed, I think, since 2020. And problem with traffic is now. So whilst I've got no doubt the highways, county highways rely on statistical analysis, and they look backwards as projecting forward. I think my problem and issue is it's the sustainability of this kind of development in what looks to be already an overloaded village.
Does anyone want to say anything further before we vote on this? Councillor Madison.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just chime in quickly before we go to the vote and say that I will be supporting the motion that we've got on the table at the moment. Just to briefly offer my reasoning, it's a brownfield site, so we won't be building on undeveloped land, which for me is a plus point in terms of building on it. Second, if it is of limited use as an employment site, I think you do need to look at alternative uses for it. And housing, I think, is naturally one of the top things you're going to think of when you think, well, what else can we use this site for? And as Councillor Batstone has mentioned, I think generally any opportunity to get some more houses up is a good thing in my eyes, given that we have around the country a shortage of housing. So for me, briefly, that's why I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Anyone got anything further?
You want to speak?
Just to point out that this application does include Section 106 funding towards transport improvement, including bus services. And I believe actually that at this site it could well be used. You could well use bus services to surrounding a business location. So I see no problem there. In fact, I see an advantage because it will help to improve public transport in that area.
Okay, anything further, or shall we take a vote? Right, we have a motion on the table to accept this recommendation, accept the officer's recommendation. So all those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? That passes. Thank you very much. Right. So we're moving on to our next item, which is 25 Orchard Way in Harwell. Sarah Green, I believe you're presenting this one. Perfect. Thank you very much. Perfect, please.
This is a application for reserved matters, 25 Orchard Way. So outline permission with approval for the access was granted in 2021, but for 5 dwellings on the site. So this application is therefore only considering matters of appearance, layout, scale, and landscaping. So the application has been forwarded by the ward member, Deborah Dewhurst. Since the publication of the report, one further comment has been received querying whether a site visit was carried out for this application. I confirm that one was on the 5th of December last year. So the site is on the western side of the village. It's located next to the recreation ground, which is to the south here. And the existing dwelling sits at the front of the site. The proposals for 5 dwellings, 1 single story at the front of the site, yeah, and 4 2-story behind it. Following the initial consultation, the plans were amended to reduce the size and height of the 2-story dwellings, as well as other small design changes to them, which are set out in para 2.2 of your report. Plots 2, 3, and 5 have been reduced from 8.6 metres in height to 7.46. And plot 4 has been reduced from 8.25 to 7.74 metres in height. And obviously on the plan there, that obviously shows it has the ridge heights and the ridge heights of all the surrounding neighbouring dwellings have comparison to. Take you to the elevation. So this is plot 1. This is the one that will be on the front, the single story facing the road. And this is the front elevation in the middle. This is then plots 2, 3, and 5. So obviously these have been amended to be reduced in height, as I've just said, and small design changes to the front to give a stronger sort of gable element with a setback to the front to help weight it up. Plot 4. Garage to plot 3. This is the boundary treatments. So the external boundaries to the site have will be hedges, so ones that face the countryside, the west, and facing the recreation ground, there will be a hedge there. Obviously, coastboarding fencing to this neighbour, and the existing fencing along here will be kept, so it goes from 1.8 down to 0.5 metre at the access way. These are some visuals that are provided by the agent. So these are some photos, site in the area. So this is in the rear of the site. This is the back of the existing property on the left, and then that's the site turning around the other way. And then this is looking to the north. So this is number 27 garden on this boundary, and you've also got the properties in Armstrong Close. You can see sort of behind that. And then turning around, this is on the boundary with the recreation ground. This is the front of the site, so the property is the white one in the centre. And then looking further up the road towards the site, so up Orchard Way around the corner, and this is the application site here. And this is a sync on the access. So looking left, looking right at the access way. As I say, the access was approved at outline. So highways have absolutely no issue with that. These are just examples, the neighbours. So on the left, this is obviously number 27, the application site on the left here. And it's further round, so 20, 29, 31. And this is the one on the other side, it's 23. And this is an example. So the ones on the left, these are the bungalows which back onto the recreational ground. And then on the other side of the road are these 2-storey dwellings. To just give you examples of the thought form in the area. This is from the garden of 27. So this is the one next to the site. So you've got the Armstrong Close properties on one side, and then on the other side is where the application site is. And this is from the recreation ground. So the site is along here. Okay. This is a bit further around, so sort of close to the A417, looking across the recreation ground. So the site will be here. So the principal development site for 5 dwellings was approved under the outline. So this matter is not for reconsideration as part of this application. So the matter of the safe access to the site was also considered and approved under the outline. Again, this isn't for reconsideration again. This is just to consider reserved matters of appearance, scale, layout and landscaping. Given the existing built development in the area, officers consider that on balance, the landscape scale and design is acceptable. Views of the site from the recreation ground will be seen against the context of the existing development, which does include a mix of development, 2-storey and single-storey. So overall, it's considered it wouldn't be harmful to the visual amenity or character of the area. The development would meet the neighbour amenity standards set out in the design guide, and there's sufficient parking to meet the current parking standards. It's subject to their recommended conditions. The proposal would accord a local plan policy and is therefore recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Sarah. We'll return to you for some questions once we've heard from our speakers. We have 4 speakers on this application. The first is Paul Looper, a representative of Harwell Parish Council. Thank you very much. Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, as with everyone else, you have 3 minutes when you're ready, and you'll get a 30-second warning before we go.
Yes, don't want to waste everybody's time reiterating what's already been said, but I've had the opportunity to see this close range and slightly further range in terms of the development at Armstrong Close, and it is massive compared to everything that surrounds it. It just stands out so much more than all the other buildings around it, and this development would be doing much the same. The actual footprint reduction in house types 1 and 3, which is around 5.5 and 5.8 square metres respectively, are around half the figures that are quoted in Feltham's covering letter, because they have actually counted both stories as being the reduction in size. But of course, that reduces the floor space but doesn't reduce the footprint, so the footprint is still pretty much the same as it was before. And then from the original planning officer's report, they were quite insistent that the first building at least should be a single-storey building. I've done some research which shows that most single-storey buildings in the UK are between 3 and 4.5 metres high. This building is over 6 metres high. So it does seem to be a little bit oversized. It's also got quite a big footprint. I think it's important to say we have no objection to the development in principle, but we're really concerned about the size and scale of it and the impact on the other residents, the amenity to the other residents, and its visibility to our recreation ground. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I'll just see if there are any questions for you. Don't have any questions? So thank you very much for your statement this evening. I now turn to our next speaker, Jez Hawthorne, who I believe is speaking in objection to the application. Mr. Hawthorne, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the last 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. I'll try to be short, just as Mr. Luca was. Regarding the application, it's paramount to acknowledge that it's doing is start the out character with its surroundings, as Armstrong Close is. When you from my script, the pictures from the planning officer, anyone that's taken a picture of something, it really does not do justice how much Armstrong Close stands out and dominates the area. It's also worth saying that the street render scenes from the recreation ground have been put probably at 100-meter altitude to foreshorten the height difference. When you look at that building line all the way along that south side of Orchard Way, it's bungalows. It's all low-level bungalows. The site is surrounded by bungalows. 27 Orchard Way is a bungalow, but not a great site, as is 29. The first time you hit a two-story property is 33 Orchard Way, where I live. It's my main issue is it will utterly dominate the recreation ground. The view from the recreation, the character of the recreation ground will be completely changed. It's going to overlook everything. It overlooks everyone around it. By making this site bungalows or smaller, it would help break up the housing line even on Orchard Way and help to do, I guess, undo some of the damage that's already been done by Felton Properties. The bungalow at the front is huge. It's not really a bungalow. It's, compared to everything around it, it must be at least a couple of meters high. It's a bungalow in name only. Issues of privacy, which I know the planning officer said was an issue, but I guess they don't live there. It really is out of character. There's some inconsistency with the traffic officer or the highways advice. On the original application that was withdrawn, he mentions wanting one of the fences lowered to increase visibility. This is on the reserved matter application, not the outline. And the original application, when this application came through, the traffic officer wasn't even down as a consultee until that was mentioned. And later on, despite the boundaries being the same size, he hasn't mentioned this 1.5 meter high visibility space. So I'm not a professional looking at this stuff, but it seems inconsistent when I look at that. Yes, it's also worth saying Harwells itself has 4,000 new homes about to be built in it. I think this is purely speculative. The original application was. I think that the size of the houses is designed to maximise the profits for the developer. Low-level bungalows, affordable housing would be much more appropriate and more useful to the village, bearing on what's going on at the moment. Thank you for letting me ramble.
Right, so thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions, Mr. Ottobon? So thank you very much for your time this evening. Our next speaker is Sean Bates, who's joining virtually. Excellent. Mr. Bates. Excellent. Well, good evening. Can you hear us?
Hello. Yes,
Hello.
Loud and clear. Thank you. Hello, good evening.
Very
good
good.
Evening.
Very good.
My name's
You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. My name's Sean Bates. I'm a director at Felton. We're the applicant here, and as has been suggested, we built the recent 9 houses adjacent. We're alert to the criticisms, and we have engaged locally, and we've tried to find a sort of a compromise and a way forward. We've worked with the planning officer for several months in terms of reducing the scale, the height of the dwellings, and softening the impact, and reducing the size of rear windows to reduce overlooking, for example. And we're fully policy compliant in that regard, by the way. I mean, some of this is subjective and personal, and yes, there are some people who don't like our development at Armstrong Close, but it was immensely popular with the buyers, and so everybody has a different view. We think it's in keeping, or at least it's complementary, and it's not harmful to the village. but others have different views. The relationship with the REC, we don't understand. The
Mr. Bates, we've lost your audio, so please stop the timer. Can you say something and we'll try and get you back. So we can't hear you. It might be the earphones. Can you try speaking again? Okay, I'm afraid we've lost your audio. Did you have to do it through the earphones or? I'm keen that we get you back if we can. Have you got any other way of speaking to us?
Suggest he leaves the meeting and rejoins.
I may suggest that in a second. Thank you.
James.
So I think I'm keen that we're able to ask questions and hear the rest of your statement if we can. So Mr. Bates, I'm going to suggest you leave the meeting and rejoin, and then I'm going to call on our next speaker and then I will allow you to speak after that, if that's okay, democratically. Perfect. So please leave the meeting to rejoin, and I will call on our next speaker, and then you'll have your remaining time when you get back. Councillor Gascoigne, our next speaker. Good evening.
Hello.
Hi there. So yeah, you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks for letting me speak this evening. As you'll be aware, this was brought to myself and Councillor Deborah Dewhurst, calls for concern on the scale, the access and overdevelopment of this small area. I understand that outline permission has been given, so we can't revisit that today, and I perfectly understand that. But what I want to focus on, and has already been mentioned, is the scale of these buildings, these dwellings, the height of them, and I really want to reiterate the imposing nature of them, particularly on the recreation ground, but also the surrounding area. You could sort of get a flavour for it in the pictures, but really, as Mr. Hawthorne said, unless you're there, it's really hard to tell. And we can't go over old ground, but I would strongly argue that if we're trying to, if we're setting precedent by where Armstrong Close, the neighbouring development, was given permission, I really do find those to be out of keeping with the local area. I really wouldn't want that to be the benchmark in which we're comparing these two. But even if we were, these new homes are much closer to the recreation ground, much more imposing than Armstrong Close was. You can see it from the main road. The main road runs alongside the recreation ground. It really would impact the character of the village. So although there has been reductions in height, these buildings are still 2-storey, and I really would like to see these as bungalows, as many of the surrounding dwellings are. That's the main focus I wanted to bring to you today. There are some other questions around biodiversity and also the access to the close. I understand that the highways officer didn't have concerns, but it really is a very tight area. Armstrong Close is another example of how tight it is, just putting those homes in off the main close. So that's all I wanted to share with you this evening, and it's mainly about the height and the imposing nature of these dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gascoigne. I'll ask if there are any questions for you from the committee. I can't see any, so I'll say thank you very much for joining us this evening, and I'm hopeful that Mr. Bates is able to speak to us. So, Mr. Bates, if you come off mute, then we'll see if this works.
Okay,
yes,
hello.
Excellent. Right. I think you've got about a minute. You've 90 seconds left, so if you could continue from where you left off.
Yeah. Well, okay. I did hear some of the ward members' presentation there, and it's clearly subjective. I mean, my own view is that the houses fit. The planning officer agrees. I lived in Hull for 5 years, by the way, so I'm not unfamiliar with the location. I don't understand the concerns about the alignment with the REC. The housing should face towards the REC in order that there's natural surveillance. There's always been a little bit of antisocial behaviour in the extremities of the REC, and actually this housing will serve its purpose well. these are not very large houses. These are the 4-bedroom houses are barely so, and we wouldn't want to make them any smaller because they'd then be compromised for families. So they are really not very high and not very large area houses at all, and a very different impression has been conveyed. And in terms of the highway impact, you know, a good deal of that is how people park locally, and it's not. This development has been supported by the Highways Authority, and that should be taken as a given. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask for any questions or clarification for you from the room. Councillor Hannaby.
Hello, Mr. Bates.
Hello.
I'm sorry that I think you all went a bit funny when you were telling us how you were working with the officers to try and make these more agreeable to the areas. Could you repeat again what you've actually done to reduce the dwellings?
Well, yes, so the size of the dwellings has been reduced. I couldn't tell you specifically how much, but materially so, and to the satisfaction of the planning officer. I know that the height's been reduced quite significantly. So the 4-bedroom houses have been reduced circa a metre in height, and you know, the bungalow is a bungalow. It's got a certain style. It may be a little higher at its apex than some bungalows are, but it's not. It doesn't have any accommodation above the ground floor. It's got 2 bedrooms. The other thing we did was we considered, you know, the overlooking aspect, and some of the windows were designed as quite large in the rear of the dwellings, for example. So they've been reduced down to narrow the field of overlooking. So we've worked with the officer for several months since you know, obviously there's been a succession of comments, largely from the same sources within the village. We've tried to respond positively. I really can't help it if some people don't like the style of what we've offered. I agree they're a little bit different to the run-of-the-mill house builders, you know, design, but we approached it in good faith, and what we're doing here is following the same pattern that was used in Armstrong Place for consistency. So we wouldn't want to change again and you know, bring another idea into play. So hoping you can appreciate that we've worked constructively towards finding a compromise here.
So
thank you for your answers.
So Mr. Bates, I've got 2 questions just for clarification. So the first one is, you mentioned you've done a fair amount of local engagement on this site. Could you maybe just expand on what local engagement you've undertaken on this site?
Well, we had lengthy discussions with both immediate neighbours. Yeah, you know, because clearly, one of the neighbours is more significantly affected than anyone else. And they were, you know, we could never say delighted, but they were broadly satisfied, and they always welcomed additional housing in the area because for security reasons. So neighbours on both sides, all of the purchasers at Armstrong Place were fully aware of what was happening. This scheme was actually approved in outline before any of them actually made a purchase, and you know, three of the 3 objections for overlooking have actually come from Armstrong Place. They purchased in full knowledge. There was no hiding it, and I'm not surprised that they've raised the question. But we've tried to engage with the parish council successively over many years, but we're not getting on very well. Jez and I know each other. Jez, we go back a long way. We know each other. You know, we used to get on quite well. We don't get on so well anymore. You don't like the housing that we built.
That's fine. It was a simpler question about how much local engagement.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. No, it's all right. And then just my second question, I think this will be my last question, although I'm slightly forgetting it now. Hang on. My second question is, just so I can get a sense, right? So we've heard from some that actually the size of these is different from Armstrong Place. Now I'm aware we're not looking at Armstrong Place, but we do need to understand the character of the area. So are these higher? Are these a different style from Armstrong Place? I mean, how are they different?
Will you just tell me?
I'll try not to go on. And that may be a question for the officer, so you can get an objective version. But they are smaller than Armstrong Place, and they are significantly lower.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Right. So thank you very much. I can't see any further questions coming in, so I'll say thank you very much for your time this evening's debate. And now I'm going to ask if we've got any questions of our officer. So does anyone have any questions of our officer this evening?
It's always difficult when new builds coming into an area, but we've heard Mr. Bates said that he's worked with you to reduce these housing down. So are you quite satisfied now that he's done all he can?
He obviously advised that they need to reduce in scale and size and height, and that's the issue. And they have done that. And I put in the report the size, the height differences. So at 7.8 is the reduction. So in terms of the 2-storey buildings, so plots 2, 3, and 5 have gone from 8.6 metres high to 7.46, which is a 1.14 metre reduction. And plot 4 is now 7.7 metres high from 8.25, which is about half a metre reduction. And I've also put in the comparison because on the site plan, do you want me to put the site plan?
Yes, can we?
It might help.
Yes, and Mr. Bates, would you mind turning your camera off if that's possible? And can I just remind everyone in the room as well, if you'd mind not chatting, so we can focus on the debate and the discussions, please.
Right, so on the site plan, so this has obviously, so they've reduced the height and they've also put the level details on here. So on the right hand side is obviously what the ridge height, the datum level will be. So down here, and then we've got the ridge heights of the surrounding properties. So 7.8 in the report, I put that. So the difference between plots 2, 3, and 5 to 1 to 3 Armstrong Place, so that's these three. So they'll be just over half a metre lower on site than these properties. This is number 4. So these properties will be 0.63 metres lower, and it'll be 1.3 metres lower than this property. So obviously that's on site, and I guess when you look at it in views in perspective terms, you'll have to obviously see that. This one, yes, this is 6 metres high. I think these are obviously there's variation. These are single story, but they do have variations in height. It is still single story. It is quite a high single story, but it does have quite a high pitched roof. So, which is obviously traditional of the areas, having a steep pitched roof, which will give you a higher pitch. Obviously the section to the side, the hip to the side, that's the main roof is running this way. The hip to the side is obviously lower, and that would be 5.88, that ridge there, and obviously it's hipped. So that's the bit that actually will face the road. I think overall, officers, given what else is in the area, you have to look at the context of the area. I think we are on balance, happy that it meets the design guide. It would be unacceptable to us. Obviously, it's up to committee to meet their own judgment. It is subjective, but that's obviously we put our opinion in the report, but that's for committee to come to your own view if you wish.
Are there any further questions? Yes, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. We had quite a lot of concerns raised about what this will look like from the recreation ground in particular, and I think I've understood correctly. Along the boundary with the recreation ground, actually it is bungalows down that side. So I wondered why we're comparing the roof heights with Armstrong Close rather than the older, more established buildings and the ones that are on that boundary with the recreation ground. Because I can understand the concerns that it is going to look large and bulky on the recreation ground in particular.
I think because when this is a photograph on the recreation ground, I think when you look across the site, obviously Armstrong Close is now there. That's part of the built-up area. It's part of the context. Whether people like it or not, it's there. I think when you look across, you're going to see that in the background, and so it will be seen in that context. As well as obviously there's other 2-story dwellings, another built development behind. So I know there is single story along here, but I think when you look in the wider context, you will see it against all the other development as well, not just those single stories along the recreation ground. So I think that's why in balance, we're sort of okay with that.
Okay, further questions for our officer? Oh yes, please, Councillor James. Please.
So, I noticed that I think the highway officer highway comment was that there should be a condition for secure cycle storage and also EV charging. I only, in the conditions there, I only saw a condition for bicycle storage, not that it was secure and covered, and I didn't see any conditions for EV charging. Is that something that you would be able to do?
The cycle storage will be covered, and it will need to be secured and covered. I mean, you can always add into the condition that the storage shall be secure and covered if members wish that to be actually specified in the condition. In terms of EV charging, I mean, that will probably be covered under building regulations.
Any further questions? Okay, in which case I'm going to ask that we have a debate on this. Oh, sorry, to someone else. Sorry, Councillor Rain, I didn't see.
That's okay.
Sorry, apologies.
It's come up a couple of times about security. That neighbours approved the thought of the development should the security levels. Is there a high crime rate in the area or something that would pick up on another thoughts?
That wouldn't be something I do.
No, sorry, in an inappropriate time. I do apologise.
So, are there any further questions for our officer before we move into debate? Right, in which case I'm going to suggest that we move into debate. So, would someone like to report a motion on this application?
I've lost the motion. I'm sorry. I would just like to put the motion that we agree.
Okay. Perfect. So,
subject to the officers, and I've just lost the motion.
It's all right. The motion is to accept the officer's recommendation.
Yes, the wording's motion.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Right. I can't see us. Okay, Councillor Batson.
Yes, I think I will second it. I think since we've got outline permission on this, it probably is about the best we can do on this site.
Okay, right, I open the floor to debate. Would you like to say anything?
Chair, may I apologise for my inappropriate question?
No, not at all, please. Councillor.
But seriously, it's been mentioned a couple of times, security. Is this an issue here? I can't. Does anyone know? Are there any security issues or reasoning that people would encourage development?
I don't think
there's any police report.
No, I didn't either.
I can't see the police comments, so I'd have to say that I don't know enough.
We'll open that question to Councillor Gascoigne as the local member who might know the area best than the rest.
No, not at this stage. I think
it's fine. That's fine.
Sorry.
We didn't consult with Thames Valley Police. Sometimes we would consult on them from a design crime point of view. We haven't done. My understanding is I think there's been comments made around antisocial behaviour from what I've picked up from speakers on the park. But other than that, we're not aware, and I'm afraid we can't clarify either way. Okay,
thank you.
So I've got a comment in terms of how I'm feeling on this one, which is that actually I mean I understand. 5 properties need to be built there. Access has been approved. We can't go back on that. But it does seem like the height and scale, just from what we've heard, sounds very big. And I don't think I can vote to approve this until I've seen it. Right. So I think that I need to go and see this site to make it clear. And that's been something that came up from multiple speakers. So I think that at the moment I'm at best in abstention or going to vote against this motion because I would like to have a site visit to go and see this site and see how it fits with the neighbouring properties. I'm sorry, Councillor Nicholas.
So I was going to say something similar because I mean I think the thing that kind of it is this subjective argument about what is in and out of character.
Yeah.
And I think that unfortunately, is it Armstrong Place or Armstrong Close? Armstrong Close. I think because that's obviously a new build, that doesn't sound like it's in character with the existing bungalows, but there must have been a planning process which approved them. So I think it's quite a difficult one. But I would strongly, I will vote against the motion on the grounds that I would put forward a motion to vote that we had a site visit and further deliberate on this matter. Also, if we did vote in favour of this application and not go for a site visit, I would add the condition that Sarah mentioned, that making sure the cycle storage is secure and covered.
Okay, I'll take some more comments. Sorry, Councillor Hanley, do you want to respond to that specifically?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, please.
Site visit, we can have a site visit. That's it. Perhaps we should have had a site visit anyway. But I've heard the developer, and I have some sympathy in how he explained it to us, as someone that actually has been in the trade and know exactly what he's saying. If you're going to build a house, the house has got to be saleable for, like he's doing family houses, etc. And I think what the planning officer has done has been extremely good, actually, in reducing the size and the windows and etc. From a developer who really wants to develop what he wants to do, but he is compromised. You've heard he's had a word with the neighbour, and that the neighbour seems satisfied. The neighbour's not here, the immediate one that's going to, So I'm perfectly okay for deferring it to go for a site visit. However, I'm not so sure that we as a planning can will houses that developers don't want to build. It's a difficult situation, and I do understand that people have to understand there's two sides to everything.
Of course,
and we do need family homes.
Okay, Jenny, and that's very much the reason why I think we should have a site visit.
As I say, that's fine, but I don't see any problem with this as a planning, and I'm looking at it as a planning proposal.
I mean, so look, we're currently on a motion on the table, which we of course can debate and vote on, and if that fails, then we might put forward another motion. So I just want to take some more comments and be clear on what we're voting on. So,
can I ask that we have one ASAP? I'm sure the developer would like to know our answer.
I'm happy for the site visit to be organised as soon as possible. But if that's the situation goes,
so there's many neighbours and that can.
Councillor Horton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I find myself agreeing with the comments that Councillor Gascoigne made on when she gave her 3 minutes of it is too big. It's, although yes, it is lower in ridge height than those on Armstrong Close, it is also a lot closer to the recreation ground than that, and some very quick estimations, I reckon it's going to look taller and probably block the view of Armstrong Close from that point of view. The provided computer generated graphic is from a pretty well elevated height compared to what you can see from even on Google Street View. You can get quite nicely into the recreation grounds, and Google Street View's taken from a camera that's well above head height anyway. So I think from the sort of views that people are actually going to be viewing this from, it's going to be quite overbearing compared to the bungalows to the that are adjacent to it along the edge of the recreation ground.
Any further comments on this? Councillor Hanley.
Yeah, again, you're looking at it from, but is it the existing bungalows you're talking about now? Well, that's a different era and a different bill.
But it's still of the area. We have to.
Well, I know we're going to have a site visit, but I think also we've got to be very objective on all sides and fair on all sides of the plank.
I think that's exactly right. And it's not bad.
Officer that's quite happy with it. I don't see any objections. That's really why I said about it.
Understood. Right. Would anyone else like to comment?
As long as everybody understands where I'm coming from.
Of course. Would anyone else like to comment on this? Councillor.
I agree entirely that the 6 metres high for a single storey actually seems very, very high, and also no one's objecting to the build. You know, they literally, it's the dominance, I think, of the buildings that are on there. So I would agree regarding the site visit and the appropriateness of the scale.
So we currently have a motion on the table.
May I withdraw that motion then to say that we will have a site visit?
I think
The motion is now on the table, so we need to vote.
so. Because the motion is on the table, we need to vote on it before we put forward another motion.
I could withdraw that.
Taken advice from Deb.
We have in the past, if both the seconder agree.
So
I'm sorry, but I've been sitting here for years.
of course.
I've been more comfortable that we voted.
Yeah,
So in which case, I think from the discussion and the debate on this, we might know where this is going. But let's vote on the motion to approve as it stands. And are we voting on that motion to approve with an additional condition or a strengthened condition on cycle parking? As long as the proposer and seconder are happy with that, right? So we have a motion on the table. All those in favour of that motion? Those against? Any abstentions? That fails. Okay, right. Now, can I call on another motion to come forward? Okay, Councillor Pickles.
I'd like to move a motion that we defer our decision and in intervening time have the site visit.
Okay, do I have a second of that motion? Councillor Badstone. Would anyone like to say anything further?
Can I just add, would we like any additional officers there, i.e. highways or anybody else that might be important in our deliberation? Because there is an outstanding kind of highways issue mentioned in this. Because the entrance is on the corner and
highways have an objective.
I mean, you can come in if you wish.
Yeah. I suggest, as at outline stage, the access was considered at that point. I do think, so I wouldn't say we need highways there, but we can certainly look, we will most definitely look at the access. And I suggest we also go around to Armstrong Close and onto the park to view this. But I wouldn't, given the situation, I don't think we need highways at the visit.
I think it doesn't need to be part of the motion as well. So if we need any additional officers, that's something that we can request at a later stage. So with that, is there any further debate on this motion to defer for a site visit so we can make a more informed judgment on this application? Okay, all those in favour? Those against? Actually, that's unanimous. So that's unanimous. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you. I now move on to our third item, or agenda item number 9, which is 134 Cumnor Hill. Nat Bamsey, I believe you're presenting on this one. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is referred to committee at the request of the local member, Councillor Scott Horton. The application seeks approval for the erection of a detached dwelling to the rear of the existing bungalow at 134 Cumnor Hill in the parish of Cumnor. The location plan is shown. The proposed location plan shows the proposed dwelling's location behind the existing dwelling. Close to the dwellings are accessed from Chorley Lane to the west. The site plan shows the dwelling and the access and parking arrangements. The existing dwelling is unaffected by the development. The proposed south elevation is shown. This is the elevation which faces Cumnor Hill. The outlines of the dwellings along Cumnor Hill are shown. As can be seen, the dwelling will be set down from the existing ground level. This is the east elevation, showing the first floor part of the house going across the site with front and rear single-story projections. This is the west elevation, which shows the screen on the flat roof rear projection designed to present overlooking to number 14 Chorley Lane. The section plan shows the height and position of the dwelling relative to the existing dwelling and the neighbouring properties. Again, this plan shows the dwelling's height relative to the neighbouring properties when viewed from the front and rear, with the existing dwelling outlined in the front elevation drawing. The ground floor plan is shown together with the bin and bike store and the parking and turning to the front of the dwelling. First floor plan is shown. Note the condition is recommended preventing the use of the flat roof areas as a balcony. The landscaping plan is showing the significant levels of plants proposed, particularly on the boundary with number 14. So photos of the site are now shown. So this shows the existing bungalow from the front. This shows the location of the proposed access to the new house alongside the existing house. This shows that the vehicular access has already been improved by removing the former hedge which obstructed the vision. This is the existing house to the rear. This is a view to the east to the properties along Cumnor Hill. This is the view of the side elevation of number 8 Chorley Lane, which the new dwelling will be built alongside. This shows the rear of number 14 Chorley Lane. The ground floor part of the dwelling will follow this boundary. This is the view from Chorley Lane along number 8 Chorley Lane's access. This is again a view from Chorley Lane through number 14. There's a public footpath that runs to the rear of the site. This is the view from that footpath looking towards the site. And again from this footpath, and you can see number 8 in the background, and that's to the side of that dwelling is where the new dwelling is proposed. And then this is the view from that footpath up to the existing dwelling. So officers consider that the main issues when considering this application is its impact on the character of the area and on neighbour immunity. The neighbourhood plan seeks to prevent backland development which would harm the character of the area or development which would erode the designated low density nature of the area. It is clear that this is backland development, but officers consider that for the reasons outlined in the report, and on balance, the specific context of this site means that the development in this location is not harmful nor contrary to neighbourhood plan policies, despite its backland siting and position within a designated low density area. Similarly, it is considered that development will not significantly harm the immunity of neighbouring dwellings such that a refusal would be justified. Therefore, subject to the recommended conditions, it is recommended the planning permission be granted. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Nat. We'll return to you for some questions that we've heard from our speakers. We have 4 speakers on this application. The first is Councillor Chris Westcott, a representative of Cumnor Parish Council. Councillor Westcott, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks. 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. This planning application, as you've heard, is supported by the VOWH planning officer and is opposed by Cumnor Parish Council. Why? Well, strict to its essence, this application is to subdivide the plot of a small bungalow and build a large 2-storey house in its back garden. As the VOWH planning officer agrees, this is classic backland development. So why is that a critical test in planning policy terms? It's because policy DBC1 of Cumnor's Made Neighbourhood Plan states that development proposals should maintain, quotes, the strong character formed by common plot shapes, sizes, orientation and building to plot ratios by avoiding backland development that will undermine this character. That policy in paragraph 77 explains that, quotes, backland development is not considered to be sustainable development. There is no precedent for backland development which would undermine the strong plot characteristics. Again, the planning officer agrees with us about those, quotes, strong plot characteristics in his paragraph 710. He notes that the dwelling is the first in a row of dwellings with long rear gardens and dwellings fronting Cumnor Hill, giving, in his words, a character of frontage development with long linear plots. So why then does the planning officer 2 paragraphs later say that in his opinion the backland siting does not undermine the local character? Apparently, as you've seen, it's because properties 150 metres away in Chorley Lane have, quotes, a more organic and informal layout with varying plot shapes. But that's hardly surprising. Chorley Lane's distinctive character assessment, separate from that of Cumnor Hill in the neighbourhood plan, record they are a mixture of sites of medieval farm buildings and cottages from the 19th century Chorley brickworks. And as you'll hear from Mr. Munsey describe in a moment, we potentially end up with the worst of both worlds, potentially a backland development permitted because of the plot shapes of the very properties in another street it will overlook. And finally, even with different plot shapes in different streets, there's recent precedent in the parish for a refusal. Just last August, officers refused backland development at 14 Arnold's Way, that's P23/V1271/4, where its garden abutted that of a property on Cumnor Hill. Referencing the same neighbourhood plan policy as here, they said, quotes, the proposed development would cause harm to the locally distinctive linear character, we have linear character here, and appearance of the immediate surrounding area by reason of the subdivision of the plot, we have subdivision of the plot here, and the creation of a new plot. They concluded this would result in a tandem pattern of development, as here, at odds with the existing linear spacious character. So, Cumnor Parish Council asked you to again uphold our neighbourhood plan, as you did only last August, and similarly refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of clarification? Councillor Abbey.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I do have to say I have actually built a house on Cumnor, and it was in the background, in the backland. But the plot itself, do you think it could take a dwelling though? Yourself, as a resident of this area, presumably.
I don't have a personal view of whether it can or can't. No. All I'm doing is telling you what the neighbourhood plan policies state. And the neighbourhood plan policies, as I'm sure you know, if you know Cumnor very well, came out of an extensive consultation process and over 1,000 people voting in the referendum for the neighbourhood plan. And one of the most contentious issues in that was the spate of backland development that we had seen in the parish.
But we have had backland.
We had before the neighbourhood plan. Before the neighbourhood plan came into being, and we now, as you've recently seen, have refusals of backland development because of the new policy.
Thank you. Any further questions? In which case, thank you very much for your time this evening. I now call upon our next speaker, Mr. Paul Munsey, who's speaking in objection to this application. Mr. Munsey, thank you for joining us. 3 minutes when you're ready, as with everyone else.
Thank you. Policy DP23 of LPP2 requires development proposals to demonstrate they will not result in a loss of privacy, daylight and sunlight. Policy DP24 does the same for the occupier of the development. Neither policy can demonstrate this application. The site is a strange shape, narrow at the top, then widening to number 8 Chorley Lane before tapering down to a narrow border. First floor of the house has been situated at the widest point, and as it angles away from the view down the plot to look across our garden. But they will be able to see almost 2/3 of the garden through to Chorley Lane. They'll look into our kitchen, utility, bedroom and bathroom windows, which are large. It will also overlook our patio and barbecue. It's the most used part of our garden. To counter this invasion of privacy, the planning officer has said that there will be no balconies overlooking our garden. The architect has put blinkers on the windows to reduce the amount of privacy it invaded. This is a bit like closing the stable door after the horse has bolted. The planning states there are no windows in the south elevation of the new development, but the middle bedroom has a large floor-to-ceiling window that looks straight into the house next door. The angle of the house being swung round means that it's overlooking both properties. Can't add blinkers, otherwise you wouldn't see out. The ground floor has 4 windows that directly overlook our house, which the planning officer says the proposed boundary treatments will prevent any overlooking. However, the submitted drawings show that you can see over a 6-foot fence into our garden from the ground floor. In the morning, when I open my bedroom curtains, I will see through any boundary treatment and be able to see into the dining room. They will then be able to watch me brush my teeth next, and they can see into our bathroom. Number 8, Chorley Lane has supported this planning application, but they objected to the last application on the grounds of privacy, as the previous submission impacted them more. Number 132, the house next door, has made no comment. I have no idea why not, because the angle of the house invades their privacy as well. The application makes no reference to how the existing bungalow will be used. The proposed plans show that the front door is now covered by a hedge. Maybe it was thought that it was unsafe to have a front door to open and into the access drive of the new development. Just because the architect is proposing the development as green doesn't mean it can invade the neighbours' or occupiers' privacy. I appreciate that you do not consider covenants in planning applications, but like to add that when these properties are sold for building, they had a covenant that no buildings should be built on our garden, number 14, gardens of number 126, 28, 30, 32 and 34.
Mr. Mundy, thank you very much. Are there any questions or clarification, Mr. Munson? Can't see any, so I'll say thank you very much for your time this evening. I now call upon our next speaker, Mr. Paul Topping, who I believe is speaking in support of the application. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Topping. You've got 3 minutes, as with everyone else, when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for considering our proposal. Our family has lived around Oxford for the last 30 years, and we're looking to build a home that is individual and has some architectural significance, but is sympathetic to our neighbours, the environment and the local area. The brief to our architect was for a self-built family home that would sit in proportion with the surrounding properties, use materials from a palette of locally used building materials, and be environmentally exemplary. The response sits lowered into the hill to minimise its impact. It's clad in wood and local flint and emulates the informal massing and positioning of the houses that surround it. It's positioned on the plot, away from the sightlines of its neighbours, and its windows placement and outdoor living spaces are sensitively positioned for their privacy and peace. Environmentally, it features very high levels of insulation, hidden solar panelling, battery storage, heat pump heating, and a goal to make it a net positive energy house. We also intend to pick sustainable building materials where possible. As a family, we have a professional and academic knowledge and interest in the biodiversity and planting surrounding our home, and look forward to making our house home to local wildlife, as well as ourselves. From the outset, we have consulted with both our neighbours and the VOWH planning team, and our design has been shaped and improved by both. We're delighted that this has resulted in support from both neighbours on both sides of the plot, as well as from your planning team, and it's met with approval from all of the statutory professional consultees. Decisions in the design and construction have not been motivated by a desire to make have been motivated by a desire to make a sensitive and comfortable family home, and not to maximise a profit or increase property density or cheapening materials or form. We hope you agree that this has resulted in a house that can be a precedent for good sustainable local development and a sympathetic improvement to the local area.
Thank you very much. I'll ask if there are any questions for you. Can't see any, so I'll say thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you very much. And now I'll call upon our final speaker on this application, Councillor Horton. So, Councillor Horton, 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep this quite brief. I think that the other speakers have done a very good job of bringing across the salient points. The main objections when I called this in were threefold, 2 of which have been addressed in the report by recommendation of conditions. Those were regarding the access road down the side and regarding the potential drainage issues. The respective officers have recommended dealing with those with conditions, which is fair enough. However, for me, the biggest point is the fact that we do have this clear policy requirement in the neighbourhood plan stating that this style of backland development is not acceptable. And as Councillor Westcott said in his speech, an awful lot of work went into developing that neighbourhood plan. We've already seen, as he said, another case where similar backland development was rejected. Honestly, I think that's the primary thing to be considered here. I appreciate the question of overlooking as well from Mr. Munsey. I feel very sympathetic towards him. I think that that is something that the committee really should be considering as well. Even if the other neighbours are satisfied, clearly not all of them are. For me, the biggest factor that I think the committee needs to consider is that there is strong local opinion that this style of backland development is not acceptable. That's all we're doing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lawson. So, does anyone have any questions or clarification? So, thank you very much for your time. I'll now open up those questions for our officers. Anyone have any questions for our officer?
For officers?
Yes, please.
Sorry,
It's all right.
yeah, the local plan, we're going to have a lot of this because we're all doing our local plans. We're still struggling in our town as well. So we have a neighbourhood plan that's been agreed. So what made you believe that that this would be appropriate, with the neighbourhood plan, as you know, as it is, that there is people do not wish to have backland infill?
Yeah, so that policy says that backland development should be avoided where it is harmful to that character. So it's a qualified, it's not a blanket no backland development. And it's all to do with context. And I think obviously you've heard that we previously refused an application on the basis of that policy, but that would have been on the basis of that specific context. And I can say informally, I've given a negative pre-app for a backland proposal in Cumnor, relying on that policy, but that was a different site with different context. Whereas this site, in my opinion, and it is a subjective opinion, and it's an unbalanced decision, opinion, is that the context of the buildings which it will be in close proximity to mean that in this instance, that it would be read as a continuation of that development rather than necessarily conflicting with the stronger development to the stronger character to the east. And therefore, in this instance, this backland development, whilst it is backland, there's no getting around that, is not harmful and therefore does not conflict with the policy.
So now,
please.
So the overlooking issue, and I have been on many at Cumnor Hill over the years on overlooking. It can be a real issue. So again, could I have your comments why you believe that Mr. Munsey won't have a problem with it?
Yeah. So in terms of obviously the orientation is slightly unusual in the sense that you've got the first floor part of the house goes across the site, so it looks down towards the sort of bottom corner of his garden, and then you've got the ground floor which is more directly orientated towards it. But the first four windows don't face directly towards the house, but they will obviously look towards the garden. But there's a screen that's proposed above the flat roof which tapers down such that direct views will be blocked from those windows closest to the boundary, and therefore the view that will be possible are from a significant distance, one which is sufficient. Yeah, and it's the angle and that distance in terms of the first floor and the screen is what prevents significant harm. And similarly, the ground floor windows, whilst they do face towards the property, obviously by their very nature they're ground floor, and with the fence and the planting that's proposed, that won't offer overlooking because any direct views would be blocked by the boundary treatment.
Any further questions? Right, in which case, Councillor Rayner, sorry.
There was a couple of comments mentioned regarding the linear design. Is that the point you're making about it not being in context with not approving it because you were looking at another side of it and not the area that got the linear design?
Yeah, so essentially the context, i.e. its proximity to that more organic form, is what means that this sighting won't appear out of keeping with the character of the area, even though it is behind frontage development. But for the sake of argument, if there wasn't those buildings next to it, it would appear out of keeping. So it's the specific context, which is what is, in my opinion, meaning it will not appear overly prominent or out of keeping with its surroundings, and hence it wouldn't go with the policy.
So now, just so I'm clear on this, so I think what the report is saying, what you're saying is that there is a strong incentive within the neighbourhood plan, which big consultation was had on, and lots of investment was made in. There is a specific thing saying no backland development, where it is harmful, but that is not, in your view, a blanket ban on blackland development on Cumnor Hill.
No.
But it's a case by case basis.
Exactly.
So this doesn't. Okay. No, I just want to get that clear in my mind. So this is about the context of this particular site, and there will be many other sites in Cumnor Hill where it will be totally inappropriate given the context.
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay. Thank you. Right, Councillor
Just the avoidance of doubt in my mind. So if number 14, number 8 didn't exist, then you would have refused this.
For the sake of argument, if that frontage development continued and there was no built form to the rear of that frontage, then yes, that would conflict with the policy. It's the specific context and its surroundings, which is what, in my view, means it's not harmful.
Thank you. Any further questions? I think that's all clear. Right, I'm going to suggest we move into debate. So to do so, I need a motion. Would someone like to put forward a motion on this application?
Well, I will. Again, listening to the arguments and knowing that area I do, but I am persuaded that this house possibly would be okay for where it is. I'm pleased that you've told us about the overlooking. I was concerned about that myself, but you've explained that. So I would propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Is there a seconder for that motion? So I can't see one. So in this case, I'll have to call for a. So would someone like to put forward an alternative motion? Councillor Pickles.
So can I just say something before I?
You can, as long as it ends up with a motion, and if it's too long, you can.
So the motion I propose is to object to it, and the main reason is what the whole point of local plans is to put in the hands. It's local democracy. Over 1,000 people contribute towards this local plan, and I think that whilst I understand what Nat is saying, and I'm not in his position, I can understand the reasons why he's saying that those houses alongside it would break up that linear form. However, when those 1,000 people contribute towards a local plan, in particular the people who consulted locally on Cumnor Hill, and the frustration I know a number of people had in the whole area about back garden or backland development, that subtlety or that intent was not there. Their intent was to stop this kind of back garden development, which I think breaks up the character of areas and actually is out of keeping. So I think that this is very much a subjective decision in terms of interpretation of that word harm in the context of the way in which the local plan is written. So therefore, in my view and my feelings are moved towards objecting to this application on the basis that I don't think it fits into the local plan or the intent of the local plan.
So let's see if there's a seconder for that motion. So a seconder, and then we can move into debate. So second. So would someone like to second that motion? Councillor Madison, your seconder. Right. In which we move into debate. So Councillor Halloween, you want to?
Yeah, I know neighbourhood plans are a good thing, and as I say, I can't wait to get out soon. However, I do worry that this then. If it's absolutely to the law of what you're saying is that there be no more building on Cumnor Hill. And yet the officer said as long as there's no harm, in his opinion, he does not believe that this bungalow, this house, with all its green credentials, etc., and the way it's placed, and we've been assured that there be no overlooking. So that is really my concern. I'm listening to everything, but from a planning point of view, and if my officer believes he's looked at all the aspects and he can mitigate overlooking, and you have got the entrance, that's all right. I haven't seen any objections again, from the consultee. So that's really how I'm basing this on planning.
Can I just,
You can come back.
can I just say, so I understand what you're saying, Jen. To be honest with you, Jenny, I understand exactly what you're saying. And there's no doubt in my mind that the officer has looked at this very diligently and arrived at a decision based on his opinion. I'm talking about, actually not really my opinion, I'm talking about the opinion of the parish council, for example, and the intent of the people is about this local plan. And I think from what I've heard, it's a very sensible local plan because it's zoned where this linear development is being maintained and not allowed to that area around Cumnor Hill, where other areas where there's more, pardon the expression, higgledy-piggledy layout of houses, they're not trying to support it. So I think it does make logical sense that the local plan here does apply and we prevent this backyard development.
I've asked the questions, I've asked the officer, and there you go. You've just got to now vote on it.
Yeah. Anyone want to say anything further? Yes, Councillor Batson.
Yes, looking at this site, it's much bigger than the sites of the other properties along Cumnor Hill. So it does look as though it has got available space, and it also does back onto buildings fairly close to the site. So I really can't. I think I also agree with the officer that in this situation, the development would be appropriate.
Can I just say, so if you do this though, it means 132 can have the same argument to do backyard development, and then the house next to it can have the same argument.
Well, we take case by case, right?
So I don't think we can discuss that because that is we don't know what other people want to do. We're looking at the application.
So I think the argument's pretty well understood, right? I think that the case we put forward, both for those who want to put forward the motion to object and those who want to. So I think we understand this. I would just suggest, though, just for absolute clarity, I might invite Ernie Hamilton to come in just to sum up and tell us on which grounds we're refusing this to specific provisions, if we pass this motion. Sorry, if we pass through.
Yeah. So just listening to what committee have said, it sounds as though you would frame the refusal reason around that the proposed development is backland development, which harms the character of the area, which is formed by common plot shape, sizes, orientation, building to plot ratios, and which erodes the designated low density nature of the area, harming the visual amenity. And that's in conflict with policies DBC1 and DBC3 of the Cumnor Neighbourhood Plan and policy CP37 of the local plan and paragraph 135 of the MPPF. I think that would be, from what I have heard, the basis of your refusal reason.
Correct.
Right.
If you wanted to refuse.
If we are minded.
But we haven't taken the vote.
Of course not. So anyone say anything final? In which case I'm suggesting we take a vote on this. So those in favour of this motion to refuse. Those against? Any abstentions? That passes. Okay. Thank you very much. We now move on to our final item, which is, let me get this right, 42 Harding Way in Marcham. And Roseanne Lillywhite, I believe you're presenting on this one. Please, when you're ready. Yes.
Before I start the presentation, I would just like to update the committee with regards to additional comments, which was being regarding the red line on the location plan. I just want to confirm that the agent has confirmed that the red line is correct and has submitted title deeds to confirm it. This application has been referred to commissioners because the applicant is a district councillor for the Martin Ward. 42 Harding Way is a linked two-storey property located within the residential development to the north of Harding Road within the built-up area of Marcham. The proposal relates to a front porch extension and a rear flat roof inverse extension. The extension will be in this section here. You can see on the back. For the reasons set out within the report, this application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've no speakers on this application, so anyone have any questions of our officer on this application? Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Chair. I would just ask if this application was not being made by a member of the council, would it have come to the committee?
No, it wouldn't have. No.
Any further questions? Would someone like to put forward a motion on this?
Yes, no,
Yes, you can. I feel it's only right. Yes, okay, right. Councillor Hannaby, if you'd like to put forward, we accept.
I would like to put forward
Right.
with glee.
Right. And seconded by Councillor Horton. Okay. Does anyone wish to say anything on this application? Right, in which case, let's take a vote. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you very much. So with that, it just leaves me to thank all of our officers for all your hard work tonight, the committee for some very hard work here as well, and indeed to all of our speakers for coming this evening. And Susie, can you please confirm the live stream has ended and I close the meeting?
I don't think we can hear Susan. She's come off mute and we can't hear her, so I'm happy.
So let's put us on mute and we're on. There we go.